Now let's turn to Labor's latest re-election bid to win over voters, in particular parents. Albanese is clearly hoping that childcare, free childcare, will get him over the line at the next election. He's pledged to spend $1 billion on 160 new childcare centres and an estimated $430 million on subsidies. Well, economist Judith Sloan joins me now. Judith, great to see you again. You wrote an excellent piece on this exact point. Do you think this is a policy that will help productivity, as we've heard the government argue, or do you think this is purely chasing votes?
Well, I think absolutely not. So one of the tranches of the changes is to eliminate what's called the activity test. Now, at the moment, if parents want to qualify for childcare subsidies, they have to be in work, looking for work, or in educational training, or volunteering, right? So that is the activity test. So the proposal is actually to ditch the activity test. So people won't have to do any of those things, and yet their children will qualify for the subsidies. Now, that has the absolute reverse effect on productivity. It's bad for the economy. And here's one of the problems, that let's say there's only one spot and one of the parents doesn't meet the activity test and the other does. If the spot is given to the parents that don't meet the activity test, that is definitely a negative for the economy.
We've seen comments from the RBA Deputy Governor where he's warned that if Trump follows through with his trade sanctions against China, that we could be impacted in Australia because of our exposure to China. What do you think about this? Does this mean that we are too reliant on China for trade, even though we keep hearing politicians say that we need to diversify? Has that not happened fast enough?
Well, look, it's an interesting point, and I think I was a very sort of traditional economist when I was thinking about this, but I'm now of the view that Trump and tariffs is quite a complicated story. So if you think about the trade between Australia and America, that's quite small, right? And in fact, we run a deficit. So Trump's very concerned about countries with whom America runs a deficit, but we actually, America runs a surplus with us. We send some agricultural products, meat. We send quite a lot of what we call mincemeat to America for hamburgers and the like, but it's quite a small thing. So the effect of any big tariff changes would be via China. So China is our largest trading partner by a very long way. So if they impose high tariffs on China, that could easily affect the demand, particularly for the inputs for the, for example, the coal and the iron ore that we supply to China. So that is a sort of indirect effect, but could be very substantial. I've always been interested because the Albanese government, I think, feels as though they're proud of re-establishing good relationships with China because, they had imposed but they had imposed some tariffs on our barley and wine and was it lobsters or something? Whereas I thought that was actually a good chance for us to try and diversify. But they're kind of giving themselves the big tick for re-establishing those trade channels. Whereas in fact, I think it would have been better, and I think up to a point it happened in barley, that we were actually able to establish alternative markets. I mean, it's just logical to have a diversified base of countries to which you export, because that's much more protective than relying on one country. And we do, and it's really, China is our biggest trading partner by a very long way.
It is indeed. And look, I think it's one thing, it's a good thing that those tariffs have been removed, but to just go back into that cosy relationship where we would once again be subject to their whims if they don't like something Australia says just when we stand up and defend our sovereignty. It's a really dangerous place to be. Judith Sloan, always love your commentary and, of course, your columns in The Australian. Thank you so much for joining me.